The surah consists of two individuals. Two people are going to be talked about, so it's probably good to understand their profiles a little bit before we do anything else. Okay, so the surah deals with one, a person named Abu Lahab, and the other, his wife. And so Abu Lahab is actually his nickname, his kunya. The Arabic language has a way of nicknaming people by using the word Abu. Abu means father of, but it doesn't necessarily refer to someone who's father of something. So for example, as a nickname, the companion of the Prophet Ali radiallahu anhu was lying on the floor in the dirt and passed out. And the Prophet ﷺ passed by him and called him Ya Aba Turab, which means father of dirt. But what that means is rolled up in the dirt. Okay, so Abu became, the closest equivalent to that in the English language is like if you put a hyphen and then man next to it. Like if some guy always plays basketball, you're like, hey, basketball man, what you doing here? Etc. Like when someone's associated with something, right? And you just kind of consider them a person of that thing. That's the Abu of that thing. Okay? So in the same way, Abu Jahl is not the father of ignorance, but he's the ignorance man. That's what that is. Okay? Similarly, Abu Huraira loved a cat. And Huraira is a cat. And he became a cat man. In that sense. Not father of a cat, but cat man. You understand? So these names are nicknames. They're titles given. And so his nickname is Abu Lahab. His actual name is Abdul Uzza. And Al-Uzza is the feminine form of the Arabic word Al-A'az. Al-A'az is, for example, from Allah's names Al-Aziz, which is authority. Al-A'az means the one who has the greatest authority. Al-Uzza is the feminine form of that. Like Ahsan becomes Husna, and Akbar becomes Kubra. A'az becomes Uzza. So Uzza is the feminine form, and his name was Abdul Uzza, the slave of Al-Uzza, which was one of the false gods of the idols around the Kaaba. In Makkah, one of the false gods they believed in, one of the considered daughters of God, was Uzza. So he called himself a slave of Uzza. So his name, in fact, was Shirk. Some scholars comment that his real name wasn't used in the surah because his name is Shirk. So it wouldn't be appropriate to use his name, Tabbat Yadaa Abil Uzza. Okay, so I'm not even dignifying that God in that context. Because in fact, there is no slave of Uzza. That's just in their imagination. But in any case, some more things about this person, and then we'll get to the rationale behind his nickname is something we'll spend a little time on. Because the nickname is Abu Lahab, which means father of the flame, the flicker of a flame, the red, orange, brilliant part of a flame, the dancing part of a flame, that's actually called Lahab. Okay, not fire itself, but the flame part of the fire is called Lahab. And of course the word occurs a couple of times. So Tabbat Yadaa Abi Lahabin Watab, and then Sayasla Naran Dhata Lahab again. Right? So it's an important nickname and it's going to have some implications. So we'll deal with that separately. But just some things about him as an overview. He's one of the wealthiest people who lived in Makkah. One of the most respected people also who lived in Makkah. He's sort of a celebrity in Makkah. He's also considered a treasurer for Makkah, and especially as a custodian of the Kaaba. So when people donate or give money for the construction or maintenance or cleanup or whatever of the Haramain, or the Haram rather, he is the person in charge. So he collects that money. And some even attributed that he used to embezzle some of that money, and some of his wealth came from misappropriating donated funds and kind of sliding them his way. Okay. In any case, he was also a businessman. Physically, he's described as someone of reddish complexion, someone which is kind of rare in the region. So he was considered brilliant, good-looking, famous, wealthy. They say he had reddish hair. I mean, some say it's reddish skin, some say it's reddish hair, because Lahab also means reddish flame. So they kind of picked up on that. There's a debate in among our Mufassirin, whether or not this name of his, Abu Lahab, was before the Qur'an or after the Qur'an. Some hold the view that actually Qur'an is the first time he was named this. Others say no, he was already famously known as this. So there's a debate about that, and there's some you would arrive at different conclusions about the name, or you would learn different lessons depending on which view. So we'll look at both of those views, inshallah. He happens to be from the Hashim family. So Banu Hashim, which is of course the family of the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's a direct uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he also happens to be the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's father-in-law. Two of the Prophet's daughters were married to two of his sons. Okay, so there's marriage connection. The Prophet's daughters are to his daughters, he's their father-in-law. Okay, and this is of course, these marriages happened before Islam. So before you say how could he marry his daughters off to Abu Lahab's kids, Abu Lahab, actually, from some Sirah accounts, when the Prophet ﷺ was born, the servant girl who came running to tell him that you had a nephew, he freed her and slaughtered lots of animals and celebrated, like he was really overjoyed that he had a nephew. So he is an uncle in the very generic sense of uncle. The meanness and the cruelty and all these other things that came, they are a later phenomenon. They are a post-Islam phenomenon. Before all of that, this wasn't his demeanor. Okay, so Chacha used to be nice, but then something happened to him. Okay, so that's what this is. Anyhow, so that's him. That's just a few things about him. Some also argued that he had an exaggerated temper, and we'll dig into that a little more, inshallah, later on. His wife, who's not mentioned by name, the Qur'an just says وَامْرَأَتُهُ, his woman or his wife. Okay, a woman, her name is Urwa, and she's from the family of Umayyah. She's the granddaughter of Umayyah, and that's Umayyah is a big name in Arabia. So she used to make a big deal out of what family she's from. And so wherever she went, she would flaunt that she's from that family. She's a high noble class woman, okay? And it's not so far-fetched. Of course, this is ancient Arab society. These are tribal people. They have a different kind of sociology, different kind of culture. So it's kind of hard to relate that to our times, but it's not that hard. You have people, in American context, we call them people with old money, like people that come from heritage, people that have a lot of estate, businesses, the Rockefellers or whoever else, There are people that have, a grandiose properties or executive estates and all of those things. And those kinds of people take a lot of pride in their heritage. You'll see portraits of their grandfather and great-grandfather and great-great-grandfather inside of their mansions and things like that, right? And they're going to send their kids to the same school that dad went to, and then dad before that and granddad and great-granddad went to, etc., right? So there's this heritage piece to the puzzle. And women of such such belonging, such family, they have a tendency among them, not all of them, but there is certainly among them those who see themselves as a class above everyone else. And they sort of size people up by what class they belong to. So if they're in a gathering, then they're going to say, I don't affiliate with these types. Or when they get out of their car, the way they treat the driver or the way they treat the waitress or the way they treat certain people, you can tell that they don't see themselves on the same playing field as these other people. You can have billionaires that you wouldn't know they're billionaires. I've met people like that. I've met people that are worth $10, $12 billion, and I didn't know because they were driving a 1994 RAV4, picking me up for Fajr from my hotel and driving me to the masjid and asking if they can volunteer for anything. And it just so happened that they let me know that they own an oil and gas company. It's like, I've met people like that. And then I've met also people that make $300,000 a year because they have, they're successful in the medical profession, and all of a sudden they would act like Firaun should come and get their autograph with the kind of, ego they have. Like, who are you again? Pyramids? Psh, I do surgery. So, there's that. So, just because somebody has wealth doesn't mean they're arrogant. Just because somebody has fame doesn't mean it's gotten to their head. And sometimes people have next to nothing, and yet they're like on top of the world. And that's the irony of, this little place on the planet that we're talking about. Abu Lahab is one person in a very big world, right? Even at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there's the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire. There are people that are much more powerful than he is. There are people that have much more, status than he does, much better looking than he is. All of these things, right? And yet, of all of that countless people in the world, Allah singled out this one person, and some critic might even come along and say, how come in the Qur'an, Allah picks on this one guy? There's so many other people that do so many terrible things. This one guy is being picked on. It doesn't make any sense. So we have to address that question too. Why single out this one person? But the point that I wanted to make in my introduction is that, there's a difference between al-alam and ad-dunya. Al-alam and ad-dunya. There's a difference between those two things. Alam is the world altogether. Alam is the world altogether. But your dunya and my dunya are separate. Your dunya is made up of the people that you know, the job that you have, the money that you have, the house that you have, the experiences that you have. That's your world. Even though we share the same planet, we all kind of live in our own worlds. We have our own worlds. And inside of your world, you could be the Firaun. You could. It's a tiny little world. It's made up of a one-bedroom apartment. But inside that world, you are the supreme ruler and you have the same qualities as Fir'aun. You don't have to own pyramids and the lands of Egypt and say, هَذِهِ الْأَنْهَارُ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِي, to be like Fir'aun. You understand? So in that world, imagine the massive empires of the world, the great traders of the world, the Chinese civilization, the Indian civilization, the Roman, the Persian civilizations, the Abyssinian kingdoms, all of these kingdoms, and then you've got this desert with just a little bit of water and some camels and mud homes and no buildings, no monuments, no towers to speak of. And inside of them there's a person whose pride is so colossal that a surah is dedicated just to him and his wife. Why? This is not about how much materially he has. This isn't a surah that's capturing a disease of people, what they have in their hands or their status in society. This is capturing the size of a disease inside somebody's heart. That's what it's actually capturing, This is actually picking up from something else. Allah mentioned previously in the series of surahs, الَّتِي تَطَّلِعُ عَلَى الْأَفْئِدَةِ, the fire of hell that will make its way all the way up to hearts. The fire of hell that will make its way into hearts. As if the fire of hell, one of its goals is to torture hearts. Physically. Why? Because there's clearly the heart is a criminal. The heart has committed a crime for which fire needs to climb up into it. And if you look at that surah, for example, when we're talking about humaza, وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ الَّذِي جَمَعَ مَالًا وَعَدَّدَهُ يَحْسَبُ أَنَّ مَالَهُ أَخْلَدَهُ. So many say it's referring to Abu Lahab or the likes of Abu Lahab. Someone who's condescending, who talks behind people, who talks in their face, who's insulting to them, and he all he's obsessed with is gathering money and making sure that it's counted and the records are kept, etc., etc. So this is the individual that we're going to be talking about and exploring his diseases. But it's interesting that Allah did not just highlight him, He highlighted his wife. And though on the one hand, when Allah described him, Abu Lahab in this surah, with his money and what he earned, مَا أَغْنَى عَنْهُ مَالُهُ وَمَا كَسَبَ. But when it came to his wife, Allah went straight to describing basically what she's going to look like in hell. Basically, that's what most Mufassirun say about that image. That his wife is carrying firewood. We'll get into that too. His wife is carrying firewood. And what in the world does that mean? And she's got this rope necklace around her neck. What in the world does that mean? And obviously she's not wearing a rope necklace right now. But those are the images presented of his wife. So we're going to look at this power couple, this celebrity couple, and see how Allah Azza wa Jal, teaches through them a very powerful social reality that can strike at any one of us. We don't have to be at the level of Abu Lahab and his wife Urwa to earn these titles, but we can be in our little worlds, and get there, right? So that's the scary thing that we have to be, watching out for. Just something specific about Abu Lahab and his wife. He was not only was he the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ and also the father-in-law to his daughters, he was also the next door neighbor. And it's also reported that when the Prophet ﷺ would recite Qur'an, he would get so annoyed and agitated, he would start cursing, he would start throwing trash over to their lawn, because what separated the front porch of one house back in the day was just a wall, and then it's the next person. Urdu speakers know the veranda, right? There's the open area out front, the courtyard of back in the day, okay? And that's just adjacent to the next courtyard, right? And they just throw, and that was private property. Unlike, nowadays we have the front lawn. It's not, in a sense, it's not private property. Though in Texas and Florida, it is a shoot to kill thing, so be careful, when you're delivering a newspaper or something, or coupons. But it was walled off, and that was considered open space and private space. Anyway, you can hear the neighbor, even private conversations. So when he would hear the Prophet recite Qur'an, he would keep throwing trash over, and this is his own uncle. When the Prophet ﷺ at one point declared Islam, it's not clear whether this happened after the surah was revealed or before, but we'll read some of the story. I'll give you the gist of it. He told his sons, two of them, to divorce the Prophet's daughters. He told them, I will not talk to you again. I will not even look at you until you divorce both of them. And they both divorced. They both divorced. And then one of them actually, to impress his father, even came up to the Prophet ﷺ, spit, and then recited some of Surah Al-Najm and said, I disbelieve in وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى. and I disbelieve in alladhi, dana fatadalla, the angel who came down. I don't believe in any of that. And he spit and he divorced the Prophet's daughter. And that's how he behaved. Okay? And so, and this all of this so that they could impress their father. Okay, so this happened in the Prophet's life. Like, when you hear these things, it's important to note that Allah Azza wa Jal has put the greatest people that ever lived, and there's no one greater than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the most humiliating, painful situations. How degrading, how painful is it for a father to experience that for his daughter? As a matter of fact, as a father, you would rather take all the pain for yourself and not see your daughter humiliated, not see your daughter in pain, not see your daughter, go through something like that, right? And yet this happened in his face, alayhi salatu wassalam. Our Messenger, alayhi salatu wassalam, faced loss of children. He faced the pain of his daughters. He saw his daughter, his beloved daughter Fatima, starve. He saw her starve and come to him for food, and he doesn't have anything. And he just tells her, just say Subhanallah 33 times, Alhamdulillah 33 times, Allahu Akbar 34 times. That's what he tells her, right? I mean, he suffered some very serious, traumatic family experiences, alayhi salatu wassalam. And that's important for us to know, because oftentimes for Muslims who don't engross themselves in the Prophet's experiences, alayhi salatu wassalam, and especially the ones that are highlighted in the Qur'an, we feel like the Prophet ﷺ came to teach us these idealistic teachings, and we are in some special situations which are hard for Islam to relate to, because Islam is about being perfect and doing the right thing all the time, and it expects these rules to be met. But, where's the empathy? Where's acknowledging that I'm going through pain or I'm in a difficult situation? And, and yet our deen, the carriers of this deen and the role models of this deen have some of the most painful experiences, some of the most difficult ones. And of course, that's one of the reasons this surah is important. He's also the one that some narrations say, even though there are lots of people attributed to this crime, when one of the Prophet's sons, radiallahu anhu, passed away, Qasim passed away, it's said in one narration, that Abu Lahab, when he heard, obviously next door neighbor, he's heard the baby has passed away, and there's crying going on, and there's wailing going on, he came out celebrating and said, Batara Muhammad, Muhammad's name will not continue. He's just been cut off. Uska to naam hi khatam ho gaya. Like, that's the way to say that in Arabic, Batara Muhammadun. His name shall not continue, he's cut off. And that's why and I talked about that a little bit when we read Inna Shani'aka huwal abtar, right, in Surah Al-Kawthar. So, and just to ponder on that a little bit, there used to be honor among enemies. And there was such a thing as honor among enemies. So, you guys, of course, you don't watch movies. I did and do, so I'll tell you. There are movies that have battles, ancient battles that are happening, and the generals meet. They literally meet with each other. We'll see you tomorrow on the battlefield. And if one of the generals lost his baby or something, the other will send a condolence letter like, we are warriors on the battlefield, but I feel your pain. I don't wish, death or destruction upon you or this or that. There's an honor among them. This guy isn't, forget enemy, he's family. He's blood. And there's a baby that just passed away. And he's celebrating. And he's celebrating to the point where the Prophet ﷺ and his family can hear it. They're next door neighbors. And he's going around, dancing around, celebrating this. Like, when people who hate you and that are outsiders, when they say things to you, it hurts. But when family says painful things, it's a different level. It's unbearable. And this is something the Prophet ﷺ experienced. Of course, he's also one of the people that publicly degraded, I would argue probably the first who publicly degraded the Prophet ﷺ. The first to publicly humiliate the Prophet ﷺ, arguably, is Abu Lahab. Why the Prophet ﷺ gets up on the mountain, the famous story, one of the first public addresses of the Rasul ﷺ, he gathered the people and he told them, if there's an army behind me, and if I was to tell you that they're going to attack, would you believe me? And because of his credibility, everybody said, yes, of course we would. And he said, but then he made the case for Judgment Day that's coming. And Abu Lahab was in the crowd. Because, when somebody got up on the mountain and made an announcement, that was their way of, you guys, you ever seen Amber Alerts? Or you ever seen public service announcements, like all broadcasts are shut off and there's storm warning or whatever else, right? When they saw somebody up on the mountain, even if they can't hear him, they can see him, that means emergency call. Drop everything, they have something critical to say. That's what the Prophet used, the emergency broadcasting service of the time. Okay, and so they go. They go and they're standing there, they're listening to him speak, and when he speaks, he says, Tabbat lak, Ali hada jama'atana. Curse you. This is why you gathered us? And the guy is doing his business, he's making his deals, he's getting a meeting, he's got clients waiting, he's got people to steal money from, he's got things to do. And now the Prophet pulls him out of all of that and he's going to talk about the akhirah like, you pulled me out of this for a lecture? And he curses him in front of everybody. Tabban lak ali hadha jama'atana. Okay? So, and we'll dig into the word tab a little later, but I'll tell you in other places he's also have been reported to say, Tabban li hadha deen. Curse this religion. And you know, when I say this in English, curse this religion, it sounds very Shakespearean. Curse you. It's an explicative in the Arabic language. When you add lam to it, tabban lam is it's a dirty word to say. It's a horrible thing to say to somebody. Okay? Then, now let's get further into the surah itself. And again, in order to get, there's only 5 ayat. In order to get into the ayat, the vocabulary is probably the most helpful. So I'll start with the word Lahab, or Abu Lahab, his name, and what rationale that's offered behind his name. If you gather all of the different aqwal that Imam al-Qurtubi rahimahullah and others have kind of summed up, they boil down to a few things. One, that he had a very hot temper. And a hot temper is like somebody who erupts in flames. Wo to aag bagola ho gaya. They say in Urdu. Okay, man, he was just on fire. When he gets enraged, and by the way, even in cartoons and other imagery, you saw like steam coming out of somebody's ears and, eyes turn red, and so this guy's got a hot temper. You don't want to mess with him. You don't want to get him upset. You have people that are very high status and all the servants and all the employees are super scared. You don't want to get him upset. And part of their persona is like they love showing that they get really upset over, why is the spoon this way? Come here. Did you put that spoon in? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to die now. That kind of intimidation. So he's known for that because he feels if he drops down and says, hey, how was your day? And how's it going? Then people aren't going to be intimidated by that personality anymore. So they have to keep up that guard, which is, by the way, a form of control. Some people keep up a very high, like they're always angry. You don't want to say anything around them because you don't know how angry they get, man. Those people, they do that not because they're actually angry, but that's the best way of never being criticized. Because you can never criticize them. You can't ever say anything to them because you're so scared that the fire shall erupt and you'll get burned in the process. So no, I don't want to say anything. Oh, them? No, I'm not gonna. I can't bring that up. You don't know their temper. Oh, you don't know how loud they get, how angry they get. I don't want to deal with that. This is part of the intimidation of someone who is an Abu Lahab. Abu Lahab as in someone who possesses an explosive, fiery temper. Okay? The other implication that's been mentioned is that he used to get drunk. Somebody who's flickering like a flame does is actually, this guy's always drunk. He's fired up with his drinks. He's lit up. Okay? So that's one of the implications that's been offered for Abu Lahab.